Check 1 2 check. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Check 1 2. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the one and only Rescue Owners Live. My name is Kirk, and you are on with the one and only, your favorite co-host, Beth Mote. And my goodness, my light is like all shaded in my face right now. Do you see that?
Yeah.
My goodness.
It'll be fine.
It'll be fine. So, I mean, it is. This is episode what? 28.
Yeah.
Episode 28. Can you believe we've been on air every single Monday for 28 weeks? I almost said months and almost said years. So, like, yeah, this is pretty exciting. I don't know about you guys, but I'm stoked. Tonight, we're going to continue the conversation about hiring, and it's going to be great because, there's so much. No matter how many people you've hired, whether you've hired, thousands of people or you've hired no people or anywhere in between, or maybe you just hire yourself. Is that what you said?
Yeah. As a business owner, you have to hire yourself.
There you go. I like that. With that said, I mean, it doesn't matter whether you've hired thousands or none or yourself or anywhere in between, because everyone needs to know how to hire, the proper way to hire, good questions to ask, because as you know, and we've said a million times, the quality of your questions dictate the quality of your results. So if you're asking stupid, dumb, terrible questions, you're going to get stupid, dumb, terrible answers. And so tonight, I want to make sure that we go through some very specific questions that you should ask and maybe even shouldn't ask during an interview. And there's all kinds of different interviews out there. And so we want to make sure that all types of interviews are addressed. And really, the very first thing that we want to talk about, and before we get into content, I do want to say, hey, go ahead and throw in the chat where you are calling in from. And if you don't mind, Beth, where we are, by the way, we're in Studio B. So if you notice a difference, layout behind us, yeah, that's because we're in Studio B tonight, and probably for the rest of December. So I mean, it's going to be fine. I'm looking forward to figuring Studio B out. It was fun. It was a completely different setup. Obviously, I mean, we're like rubbing shoulders over here. There it is. But you know what? It is what it is. I love it. So hey, look. So go ahead and put in where you are listening in from. We want to know where you are in this world. We do have a world, like a global audience. So that is super exciting. So tonight, we're going to be talking about hiring. Hiring, as always, we want you to ask us questions throughout, because this is for you, 100% free, and we want you to be able to ask all the questions that you have regarding hiring or anything of the sorts. So in order to scale and grow your business, you have to learn how to do a few things. Number one, you got to inspire people. If you can't inspire, how are you going to attract? How are you going to align them? How are you going to develop them? How are you going to retain remarkable team members who are aligned with what you want to do? And by the way, if you don't know what you want to do, that's problem number one. And so we want to make sure that everyone, first and foremost, knows what you want to do.
Well, and that's, people may be like, oh, well, that's silly. Of course, I know what I want to do. This is what business I'm in, XYZ. But that actually is a very valid thing that a lot of people miss. I was literally just talking to another small business owner today, another entrepreneur who was, talking about their business with me, telling me different things. We were contemplating helping him add something to his business, a new product line. And I was like, okay, what's your end game with this? What is your ultimate goal? What are you working towards? And he literally looked at me and was like, I don't know. I'm really not sure yet. I haven't figured that out. I'm just sort of, as opportunities arise and I like them, I'm going with them, but I don't specifically have a goal in mind for where I'm going. And while that might not be a problem with something that's like a hobby or on the side, if this is truly your bread and butter and what you're doing every day, you should have some end goal in mind, especially if you want to grow, because otherwise you don't have anywhere to lead anyone else, because you don't know, you're not leading yourself to begin with.
That's so powerful. And I think it starts with a 50,000 foot view of your business. And if you're a single owner entrepreneur, you are the business. And what'll happen is so often what we see is entrepreneurs are on this big old hamster wheel, right? And what we see is they're working in their business so intensely, but they don't, take the time to, be intent, like to have intention of, how they work and what they work and why. Did I say why already? How, what, why, all the things, right? And so we want to make sure that you're not just working in your business, that you're working on your business. And my goodness, I read something earlier today. Maybe it was earlier this week. So it was something on social, I think LinkedIn, and I have no idea who said it. So if you know who said it, feel free to, give them credits in the chat. But basically, he asked the question, "Hey, if I were to give you the opportunity to pick one vehicle, like your favorite vehicle, what would it be?" I mean, go ahead and throw it in the chat. If you know what that favorite vehicle is, throw it in the chat. That one vehicle that you're like, dude, this is my dream car. All right. Everyone knows what their dream car is. Now, the second part of that conversation was, okay, the only thing I didn't tell you about this was is going to be the only car you will ever purchase and own for your entire life. You only get one. All of a sudden, you're thinking, okay, I got to make sure that I do the brakes. I got to make sure that I do the car insurance right. Maybe go from liability to full coverage or whatever that looks like, right? I mean, like now you're thinking,
so like just not just that brand car, but one car.
One car your entire the rest of your life. And so what you get kind of start thinking about is, okay, all the things you have to do differently, knowing that you're going to have to keep this for however many years, 75, 80, 90, 100 years. What are you going to do differently to maintain that car such that it is, cared for and loved and, all the things, right? That's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
Now, what he did is he shifted it over. The guy who was speaking, he said, okay, I want you to consider that car as your body and your mind. You only have one of those. You only have one body. You only have one mind. And what I'm getting at here is you have to the extent you take your body seriously, you will take your business seriously. You've heard me say this 1,000 times. And for those who are not taking their body seriously, how can you tell others, hey, you should eat right, you should sleep right, you should exercise, when you're not doing that yourself? It is a very tough sell to try to sell someone something that you yourself haven't bought into. Now, you could, what are the three things? You got to be willing, able,
and ready.
Okay. In order to make change, you have to be willing, ready, and able. Those three things are the formula to affect change. So you might be willing, you might be ready, but are you able? You might be able and ready, but are you willing? You might be willing and ready, but are you able? Did I say all those right? I think so. But like start those three things: willing, able, and ready. And so like start viewing all these decisions that you make and realize, okay, am I willing? Am I able? Am I ready to do X, Y, Z? Because if you're not, it's not going to happen. No matter how willing you are, no matter how ready you are, but if you aren't capable, which is, able, fully set out, if you are not capable of doing running a marathon, guess what? You will not be able to run that marathon. I mean, I think that's kind of cool because you're training for a marathon right now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So like all that to say is when you think, okay, that one car, and I got to keep it my whole life, realize that, hey, look, your body, you've only got one body. You only got one mind. You only got one soul. And those things you got to take care of. And everyone, it's a huge debate of which one you take care of first. But I would say those three things are very equal in importance, because without a physical fitness, you can't have a sound mind. Without a sound mind, you can't have, a solid soul, right? I mean, like all those three things work in conjunction with each other, I would say.
Yeah. Well, people talk about lifespan, but they don't think about health span.
I like that.
And if you don't have both, I mean, that goes back to like with, any kind of heart problem. If you can't get there immediately, you may save the person's life, but they may be in a state to where either they're not fully themselves anymore, or they're in a vegetable state. Like, you may bring them back to life, but they may not have that health span anymore. And at the end of the day, time without health is irrelevant almost.
Ooh, that's a quote. That's a quote.
So important to be able to take care of all of that, especially with CPR instructors.
So how does this apply to business? This applies to business because 2/3 of the 31.5 million small to mid-sized businesses are single owner businesses. That means that the single business owner, they are the business. They are the business, and is an extension of them, which means if their health is out of whack, if they're obese, if they're not able to, pick up a CPR bag, if they're not able to demonstrate how to give proper compressions without wheezing and like not able to talk afterwards. I mean, there's like, how can you possibly go somewhere and say, hey, let me show you how to save a life when you haven't even saved yourself?
Well, and since we're specifically focusing on hiring, how can you then speak to your employees and say health is important, being able to do all this important, being able to have an AD on site when you go is important if you don't have any of those things, whether it be health and AD with you, the ability to, perform compressions without getting winded and having to do just a couple to show them, all of that. If you can't perform it yourself, you're never going to convince anyone else to do it.
That's a great point about the defibrillators, which is exactly why we created the Rescue Side Affiliate Program. For those of you who don't know, about 5 years ago, I want to say 6 years ago now.
Yeah.
I've had the opportunity to listen to a Holocaust survivor give her testimony. During that testimony, an elderly gentleman stood up, shuffled his way over to the door, collapsed, and died of a heart attack. No one knew what to do. Now, I had previously been trained in CPR, so I went to work, barking out orders like call 911, go get the defibrillator. By the time I got the man's shirt off, an off-duty nurse joined the rescue with the requested defibrillator. She put a pad on. Excuse me. Wow. Did you hear that? Did that go through? I just had dinner. She put a pad on. I put a pad on. And like the first shock can do something called agonal gasping. For those of you who know what that means, it looks like you're breathing, but you're not. It's like a muscle spasm. And to paint you a picture, all of his children, all of his grandchildren were right there witnessing the death of their father and grandfather. And this was a highly emotional scene. In fact, one of his daughters started yelling at me, "Get that off of him. You're going to hurt him." She had no idea because she had never been trained how to save a life. And so, of course, he needed a second shock, and he came to. He started blinking. He was awake. And guess what? Again, if we had taken those pads off, he wouldn't have got the third shock that he needed, because guess what? It was a heart attack versus a heart attack versus a sudden cardiac arrest. My gosh, I'm getting my facts all messed up. What that means is a heart attack is a blockage of artery. It's a plumbing issue. A sudden cardiac arrest is an electrical issue, and that can happen to anyone. But in this particular case, it was a heart attack, which means he came to, the shock worked, he's alive. Guess what? That's awesome. But the arteries have not been cleared, and boom, he went out again. And so he had to have a third shock. And by that time, EMS were literally right next door. This is a clockwork situation. Long story short, the guy lived, which is best case scenario. I went home that night. I kind of relived the scenario in my head. What to do right? What to do wrong? What could I do differently? And I did some research. I'm on my computer over here, and I'm saying, okay, I found out that this is not an isolated incident. In fact, heart disease is the number one cause of death in the world. And oh, by the way, 80% of out-of-hospital cardiac arrests happen at home. That's someone you know. That is someone you love. So I decided then and there, that was my catalyst to become a CPR instructor. And I started teaching everyone who would listen. I didn't care if they paid me. I was like, look, you need to know how to save the lives of your loved ones. And after doing this for a while, the number one question I got asked, you know what that was? Kirk, where can I get this thing called a defibrillator that you just taught me how to use? And I shrugged my shoulders and said, I don't know, Google it. until I did that one too many times. And I realized, hey, I was not serving my customers properly. And so they're begging for more information. They're begging for me, to go deep with me. They looked at me as the authority on the subject, which I was, and I still am as an instructor. And you are as an instructor, by the way.
Well, and they created relationship and trust with you.
Exactly. And so what then happens is I realized that I wasn't doing my job properly. So I then became a distributor of defibrillators. I started working directly with manufacturers. And what that allowed me to do is be able to answer that question. Hey, Kirk, we're going to get this thing called a defibrillator that you just taught me how to use. I got you covered. Go to my store. I want to show you. We got this thing called a Zoll 80 Plus. It's incredible. It'll actually tell you to push harder or good compressions. It does all the stuff, right? And so I got so excited because I not only, you know, told them that they need it, but I also bought it myself first. And when I bought it myself first, I was able to say, hey, when they asked me, hey, Kirk, which one do you get? Which one did you get? Which one do you have? I'm like, dude, this is the one I have. This one, by the way, is a real one because I take it every time I teach a class. I take it there because I know 50% of the places I go, if not more, at least 50%, do not have a defibrillator on site. And
Or it's
how
not
horrible.
ready.
And not ready. And if they do have a defibrillator on site, the pads are expired. It's not ready to rescue.
Well, and I know just from talking with lots of other instructors that one's extremely common. That's not just things that we've seen, but across the country, across the world, it's very common for people to get the ADs and then not properly manage them.
Which is so sad because that's a major lawsuit waiting to happen for those of you who understand law and lawsuits and whatnot, because that is false sense of security that your employer has your best interest in mind and has put that there, making you think that if the worst case scenario happens and someone has a heart attack or sudden cardiac arrest, that y'all are ready to rock and roll, ready to rescue. But guess what? You go to, hey, go grab the defibrillator. You go grab it. You go turn it on. It won't turn on. You turn it on again. It won't turn on. Oh my gosh, what is going on? Or you turn it on and like the pads were so expired. We literally had a conversation with someone with defibrillators that were so old. I kid you not. We looked it up on the FDA approved list. It wasn't even there. I had to do a Google search to figure out what brand this was because it's not a brand that you've ever even heard of, for most of y'all that are in the industry. That's how old they were. And I'm like, bro, you got to get this taken care of today. Today. That's how urgent it was. And so all that to say is I bought in myself before I tried to, sell it to someone else. And by the way, everyone hates the S word, sale. Oh, I don't sell. I don't do that kind of stuff, right? Why? How like let me ask you this. How did you sell the class? Sale.
You're killing me.
Sell. How did you sell the class that you just taught for these people? That you had to sell them on a class. Oh, well, it's a service. Yes, it's a service. And wouldn't you say that you're servicing someone by giving them the products that they need to have the knowledge and the resources to marry the two so that they are ready to rescue at all times?
Well, and here before you get too far
I'm getting excited over here. My goodness.
Javier's asked, we see that often. How can you get owners to follow up or take ownership seriously? We've been here, 20 years. Just that mentality really sucks for the community.
Are we talking about the owners, like the CPR instructors? Are we talking about the owners of the clients?
Owners of like the AEDs to actually keep up with what they've done. Feel free to clarify.
Yes.
So I got that wrong.
So one thing that we teach in sales training is taking 100% responsibility on ourselves. We never put responsibility on someone else, our clients, or any other owners, right? We want to make sure that we personally take responsibility for 100% of good and bad. And so, and it might have just been the way that you worded the question. How can we get owners to follow up?
Owners of the ADs. Yeah.
Okay. So like it is our job as the experts to follow up with them. And I want you and myself and everyone listening on this call, every CPR instructor, everyone in this industry to take note of this. It is your job to take full responsibility of follow-up. It is your job. They might have purchased a system like Plus Track or 8365 or there's several out there. I'm trying to remember. Total Solutions is another one. Like there's all kinds of options out there, and there's some plugs for these guys. But they might have the solution, but they're not using it. Guess what? It is your responsibility as a person who sold it to them to make sure that they use it properly.
Well, and I'd suggest too, if they do have the management solution set up, go in person and visit them. Like that in-person interaction tends to make a bigger impact than an email or a phone call. I would say order of impact would be like email, phone call, in person, because maybe video thrown in the middle somewhere there. Just because that in-person interaction tends to help people take action and takes matters more seriously than if you're simply just sending them another email that gets into their inbox. It also helps them to be able to ask those questions, because I've had so many customers who you send them an email, you're talking back and forth, and then suddenly they go dark. You get them on a phone call, and then suddenly they're like, oh yeah, I actually had a bunch of questions. I just never got to emailing them to you. Or I did email them to you and they really didn't. And
people get busy.
I didn't hear back from you. And so taking that time to follow up on the phone or in person, they'll take that extra minute at that point, because they've already set aside time for you by answering that or letting you in the door. And you'll be able to start that conversation up in a way that you wouldn't if you were just following up via email.
One of the things that we do when we sell a defibrillator package, a program is what we call it, a rescue site AED program, is we include the hardware, the software, training, and maintenance. So a lot of times the hardware, like the defibrillator program, is an upsell of the training, or vice versa. You sell the defibrillator and the upsell is the training. It doesn't matter either way it goes. Is the same results, where you get the hardware, which is going to be the defibrillator, the wall cabinet, or Pelican case, whatever, sign, right? That's going to be your hardware. And then you got the software, which is going to be your AED program management solution, no matter what that is. Now, with that AED program management solution, you got to make sure that they understand how to use it. It's not this, here you go, have fun. Like, we literally do an onboarding call to make sure all the people that would potentially use it, or even like to know how to use it, or just curious, I say get them all on the call. I want everyone, because you can have unlimited users. And so basically, anytime that someone passes the defibrillator in the hall, you can empower all of your employees. Hey, pull out your phone and scan the QR code yourself. And guess what? You just did an AED check, because you saw that, hey, there's that green check mark there.
Well, now they're much more likely to actually utilize the AED too, because they're interacting with it more often and they feel like they know it a little bit better, and they have that empowerment of, oh, I know how to check if it's working, and I know how to check for this or that. So all of those things are extremely helpful for the community buy-in to the equipment being there as well.
That's awesome. So, like, here's the thing: when people, sorry, I got distracted. An email came in with money. I was like, hey, something sold. I don't know. But so what happens is, you have the hardware, now you have the software, now you have employee buy-in. Like, they're excited about this. Hardware, software, training. So you've already done the training, and the maintenance. So the maintenance is going to be the monthly AED check, the annual inspection, the pads that expire 2, 4, 5 years at a time, and replacing those. That's going to be the maintenance. So you can either do that as a service yourself, or you can have them do it themselves. But again, you got to take 100% ownership, as if they're not doing anything. You want to make sure that you're calling every month. Hey, I noticed that you didn't check your AED this month, and I wanted to call and make sure that everything is okay with that defibrillator.
And that's branding for you.
Huge. And it's an easy touch point with your clients, because so often people, first of all, hate cold calls. But guess what? You've already sold this person, so they're not a cold call. Now they're in client. Now you get to service them, and this is part of the servicing. This is you saying, hey, I just want to make sure that the thing I sold you is going to be ready to rescue in the worst case scenario for you guys.
And that's a good way too, even just to practice like sales calls in a like easy way, because you can just do a follow-up call. So you probably have a bunch of customers that have purchased from you that you haven't talked to in a long time, and that happens even to us. And so you might have those automated emails going out, but you haven't personally touch pointed with anyone. And so taking that time to call them up and say, hey, like he's saying, even monthly, that way when they need something or they realize they do need to update something, and maybe it's not set up to be automatic, you always want to do that if you can. Now they know who to reach out to because you stayed top of mind for them. Whereas I know we had a problem with a product that we use, and they were like, oh, you talk to support, and they're like, just reach out to your personal representative. I'm like, I don't even know who that is.
Oh yeah,
like
that's
we
so
haven't
true.
talked to them since we first purchased the product, and I have no idea how to find out their information. Let's see if we can find our first email with them. So you don't want that to happen in your case. It's super important to go back and touch point with your previous clients. And it can be as simple as, hey, like you said, I noticed you didn't check it up this month, or hey, have you been checking? I noticed it didn't this or that, it wasn't checked for the past couple months. Or as simple as, hey, just wanted to see how your business is doing. So glad we got you outfitted with AEDs 4 years ago. Just wanted to check in, see how you are. It doesn't have to be complicated.
I mean, we literally have follow-up campaigns that last, let's see, at this point, 5 years. So like if you're interested in knowing, okay, how to creatively follow up with somebody for 5 years, and this is someone that you haven't sold, as well as people who you have sold, how do you continue to stay top of mind without bugging the stew out of them, right? I mean, we do video messages all the time. We make sure that the people know that we're thinking about them. We use their name. Yes, it takes time, but guess what? It is so impactful when someone sees a video. Hey, this is Kirk with Rescue Site. I just wanted to let you know, Javier. Thank you for listening to Rescue Owners Live tonight.
And the more that you do this, the easier it becomes, because
100%.
the first couple times you do it, it's not because it becomes rote or you're just reciting it from memory. It's because you get better at doing it, and anything you get better at, you get faster at. Just like making a dinner recipe, the first time you do it, it might take you 2 hours, but once you get into it and you've done it 10 times, it might take an hour.
I'm gonna add this pop pizza, and it's about the same amount of time every time.
If you're cooking something from scratch. Just like when you're doing a cold call from scratch or a thank you follow-up call from scratch.
Which, by the way, you should never do a cold call from scratch.
Well,
you should have a script, and if you don't,
even if you're practicing, at some point you're doing it from scratch.
Well, no. What I'm saying is you should practice
before you call. I get it.
Yeah.
For my purposes, though, all I'm saying is
I'm ruining your
the
example.
The first time that you do something, it's going to be significantly harder than the 20th time.
Agreed.
So just get started.
Agreed. Yes, you definitely want to make sure that, look, I know when I first started doing videos of myself saying, hey, this is Kirk with Rescue Site.
Still things to be improved.
I mean, like, I cannot tell you, I literally replayed that same video. Beth saw it happen like 20 times, and that's no exaggeration. So like it is a muscle. Like, it is not something that comes naturally. And by the way, it doesn't have to be perfect. If your dog barks in the background, if you accidentally burp, I mean, like, this, like, roll with it, because guess what? That is life. That is unfiltered. And we live in a society of so much filtering of it. Just scroll through Instagram and tell me you don't see filters. I mean, we live in a society of people putting on this front that they're all that and more. And like, hey, look, we're this here tonight. We're in Studio B. We got a white background. I mean, it's super basic and like nothing to brag about, right? I mean, we just want you to be able to have the knowledge of how to properly respond to an emergency situation. We want you to have the knowledge of how to, properly service your clients. And we want that knowledge to obviously to be free in this format. But if you want to go deeper with us, I mean, that is literally where we thrive. We absolutely love our platform partners. It's such an incredible experience, because what it does is it allows us to dive deep into your sales, your operations, your marketing, and your administration. So often people, they think about maybe one aspect. They think really hardcore about marketing. Oh, I got to dump money into marketing, and they waste all this money in marketing. And I say waste. There's two different kinds of waste. The type of waste where you don't have your vision, your mission, your core values figured out. Because if you try to push a brand without a direction, then that is wasteful. Now, the other kind of waste is, yes, you're going to waste money on marketing because you don't know what you know until you know it. And so you you got the A/B testing, you get all these things, and there's no way for you to possibly know how to perfectly tailor that specific campaign for that one type of person that you're looking for without A/B testing a million different times and wasting money. But guess what? I mean, like, you don't market just for the customer. You market for four reasons. One is for you yourself to know that you are in business. All right. Number two is you market for your employees. If you don't have employees, maybe you have 1099s, maybe whatever the case may be, you market for them. You want them to know and see that. And by the way, I target my employees, I target my 1099s, I target those people because I want them to know that they're my second reason that I'm advertising and I'm marketing, that they need to know that I'm in business and I'm thriving, right? Number one. Number two. Number three is for my competition. I want my competition to know, hey, Rescue Site is on my tail, man. They're doing things that I haven't even thought about doing. In fact, I want to just give them a call and see how they're doing it. Because guess what? We're going to answer that call and we'll be happy to tell you how we're doing it for a fee. Just kidding. But really, yeah, we do charge for consulting. But all that to say is you market for four reasons: for yourself, for your employees, for your competition, and fourth and finally, you market for your customer. And so if you get that correct, then you're doing it right. And by the way, if you're marketing just for the heck of marketing, that's not good marketing. You got to know your vision. You got to know your mission. You got to know your core values, because if you don't, you are in fact wasting money. You are in fact wasting everyone's time. And guess what? You can't find people to, attract. You can't inspire people if you don't know your vision, your mission, and core values. You can't align them with your vision, your mission, your core values. You can't develop them within your vision, mission, and core values. And you certainly can't retain remarkable people if you don't know your vision, your mission, and core values. Have you heard enough to make a decision? Have you heard enough to sit down tonight and take some time to write down your vision, your mission, core values? If you don't know how to do that, we would love to help you with that. Message us, support@rescuesiteservices.com. Beth, throw that in the chat if you don't mind. Support@rescuesiteservices.com. Support@rescuesiteservices.com. That's an email that you can email us directly, where we will respond and we'll make sure that you know how to properly create your vision, your mission, your core values, because we want your 2022 to be the best year to date. All right. We want it to be the best. And that starts with you. It starts with you knowing what you personally value, what your business should value, what your personal mission is, what your business mission is, what your personal vision is, what your business vision is. And when you got those things set up, when you got those in line, and you start marketing the heck out of it, start telling your story, start like at least once a day, 7 times a week, on the weekends if you have to, share your story. Because when people hear your story, they're going to get inspired. Okay. And that's one of our core values. Our number one core value is inspiration, discipline, accountability, transparency, alignment, and results. Can you whip them out that fast?
Am I supposed to give you $100?
Oh yeah, she's giving something away here. So when we do consulting with groups, and yeah, if we come to your house, we might. When I say your house, I mean your business house. When we come to your house, your building, your team, your culture, and we do consulting, I'll wave $100 bill out. I say, hey, who can tell me your vision? And who can tell me your mission? Who can tell me your core values? And if every single person in that room has the exact same answer, everyone gets $100. But guess what? More times than not, when I say not, I mean 100% of the time, no one person has the same vision, mission, core values as everyone else on the team. Because the leader at the top has not established, has not inspired them, has not aligned with them with his vision, mission, core values. And guess what? Now everyone is on the ship tossing and turning like a ship without sails. Okay. And that's the picture I want you to see in your head is a ship without sails in the middle of an ocean, in the middle of a storm. Like how can how can you weather the storm without a way to a direction, without a compass, without that compass is your vision, your mission, your core values. And so I just can't hammer that down enough. Our vision is to create a world where no one dies from sudden cardiac arrest. That's huge. That should scare some people because that is, to some people, might be unattainable. But guess what? That's the type of person I want to get behind, is a person who has a huge vision. Because if you're thinking this big, no one's wanting to get on board with that. People want to get on board. Look at Elon Musk. Man, that guy is not only thinking about the world, he's thinking about the universe. He's going to Mars. All right? Guess what? He is attracting people because he's telling people his vision. And he's sharing that story every single day. I mean, do you have something to say? I'm just rolling here. I mean, I would love for you to chime in. You got something?
I would like to know how this ties in with employees specifically. Obviously, you need to have a clear path for people to follow behind you. But at the end of the day, how do you actually get people to be engaged? How do you get people, even if you lay out like for a gold carpet, how do you get people to actively buy in?
1/3 of, let's just throw down some stats because I hear your question. I want to throw down some stats to kind of back up your question. 1/3 of the workforce out there are actively engaged. That means that they're good to go. That means that 2/3 are actively disengaged. And actually, I want to break that down. So 2/3 are disengaged. There are 2 levels of disengagement. There are level number 1, which is actively, I guess that would be level 2. Level number 1 is this disengagement. All right. Level number 2 is actively disengagement. What's the difference? The difference is that actively disengaged person, employee on your team, are the people that are actively undermining your vision, your mission, your core values, the culture of your team.
And you've definitely seen these people. What we're talking about when we say that. It's the person who looks frustrated the second that you ask them a question at a store, or the person who answers your call and goes, "How can I help you today?"
I mean, I have to smile when I hear that because that's so true and terrible.
You just there's someone who it takes no effort whatsoever to notice as a customer and an employee, but it can be challenging sometimes to notice as a boss because they're normally not going to act like that around you.
True.
And that is where the rub happens of needing to find a way to be able to weed out those people on the front end so that they don't get hired in the first place through a series of strategic questions and enough hoops to jump through that the right people are the only ones willing to do so.
Yeah.
As well as just being very engaged with the rest of your staff that you feel confident and have a lot of trust in, so that they know that you're someone who wants to know when someone gets on the team that shouldn't be there, or someone might not start out that way. Things can happen that cause people to become disengaged.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that could be completely outside of you. It doesn't mean that you don't have a clear vision, mission, and core values. It doesn't mean that anything wrong has happened in your business. Sometimes it's just a life shift for people, and they allow certain things to get in their way and bog them down and change their viewpoint to where they become that Eeyore walking around with a cloud over them, regardless of what happens in their day.
We literally use the term Eeyore for people like that all the time. We even have a guy that we refer to as Eeyore because of his personality.
It permeates rooms.
Yes, it is.
When someone walks in that is just full of joy, they don't have to say a single thing.
No.
They don't have to do anything special. When someone walks in that sees doom and gloom at every corner, you feel it.
There's an ambiance when, what happens when you walk into the room? That's a question I want you to seriously, if you're taking notes tonight, write that down. What happens when I walk into a room?
And that's something you can notice. It's not something that's outside of your ability to tell. You just check. Do people that were laughing stop?
Yeah.
Do people suddenly brighten up? Because that happens.
Yep.
There are times when you walk into a room, people go, "Hey, it's Beth, it's Kirk, whatever." And people will just go, "Oh, it's Beth, it's Kirk." And they
And
just
like,
sort of meander away.
hey, throw these teeth out, like smile a little bit. Like people, like I'm not sure why people are afraid to smile, but some people are. It like that pushes people away. All right, like throw smile a little bit, like show your teeth, like
It's good on every level for you, for other people, for everyone, because literally, like, for example, I was reading an article the other day on running, and it literally was like, you run better when you smile. Because it does, because
is that
you
why I was seeing you smiling earlier today?
maybe not earlier
I
today.
saw you smile like right before you like head out. You're like you had some music going, and you're like,
I definitely used that recently though when I was not feeling it. But even if it's a forced smile, quite literally it releases endorphins. And that then not just affects you, but affects everyone else. Because I know people here have had an experience at some point where they were having the worst day ever, and some random stranger didn't even talk to you, but they just were like, they just had a really genuine, happy smile, and they shared it with you for a moment and then continued about their way. And something in your day got slightly better. Nothing else had changed. Literally nothing had changed in your day, but you had a nice smile shown your way that made you smile back. And suddenly now you have these endorphins from your own smile, and just everything changes going forward.
so I want to go back a little bit to something that you said earlier about disengagement. You're like, how do we keep people from being disengaged?
Mhm.
So reasons for disengagement, number one, is not knowing what is expected of the team member in the role. Have you properly communicated roles and responsibilities to your employees? Because if the answer is no, or maybe you even think you did, but you really haven't, like flip the roles, right? Imagine if you were that employee receiving that specific, instruction, how would you, respond to that? How would you say, okay, obviously he meant this when really you didn't mean that? And that's the whole purpose of show them, then, shadow them and then let them roll, And so it's so important to like literally, hey, let me show you how to do it. All right, now you do exactly what you saw me do, and then they figured it out. I was like, all right, now you can do it by yourself.
Well, and that can be a good tool as well. This is good in general use, but great for business stuff where if either you struggle with explaining things clearly or the person is struggling and understanding, somehow there's a gap of understanding between the two of you for whatever reason, having them telling them something and saying, "Hey, can you repeat back to me what you think I just said?"
Mm,
And just have them in their own words tell you what they think you just told them to do or that you needed from them. And that's going to clarify if there's communication issues as well. It
yeah,
doesn't have to be like, you got to find a good way to say it. Don't be like, tell me what you think I said. But simply just saying, "Hey, I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Could you just tell me what you think I just told you? Could you rephrase that for me in your own words?" And if you're not on the same page, you then have a clear opportunity to realign versus, coming and checking on them a week later and them going, "Oh, I thought this is the project you wanted me to work on." You're like, "No, it was something totally different. Same topic, but that's not what I needed."
yeah.
And that saves both of you frustration, time, and you'll be able to get clarity going forward from the very start.
So no clear job description is basically what she's saying. And so if you don't, and this starts with like if you're posting on job boards, like it starts there. You need to write an accurate, a proper um, job description for the job that you're hiring for.
And sometimes you might not know that.
Right.
That probably is oftentimes why they're so unclear, because I know many people that I'm friends with complain about how their job description and what they actually do
Completely different.
don't
Yeah.
align.
Yeah.
They're
You're
like, they
exactly right.
hired me for this, but I sort of became this/this/this/this/this.
Jack of all trades.
And that also comes back to a hiring issue as well, because often that happens because you lose people and you don't have anybody to replace them.
Mm.
And so you just start throwing things on someone else, and they're like, well, do I really need to replace him? Because Joe over here is doing great, doing 4 jobs. Like, I'm paying him for one, and he's doing 4. Why do I need to hire 3 new people? And then Joe gets burned out, and 6 months later, you have no one.
Well, you just mentioned something very important, which was, or at least I heard it, is most people hire when they have to hire.
Mm-hmm.
Like people don't aren't hiring because they want to hire. They're hiring because they just lost a key player. They just got a 2 weeks notice, and it's like all of a sudden you're scrambling to find that perfect hire in 2 weeks, which rarely happens, by the way. And so, what I would encourage you to do is always be hiring. We should make T-shirts. Always be hiring. ABH. That sounds good.
Yeah.
ABH. Always be hiring, because if you're always hiring, that means you're always interviewing. And guess what? You might find that perfect hire just by interviewing. And if you're not interviewing at all, and you start to interview the second you're like, okay, now I need to hire someone because I had this, family situation or this XYZ situation, or someone just gave me 2 weeks notice, and all of a sudden you're scrambling to figure out how to fill this need. That wouldn't happen if you're always hiring, if you're always interviewing, and like that would allow you to grow your team really, really quickly, by the way. And like so often, like, so 31.5 million small to mid-sized businesses, 25 million of those are single owner LLCs, or maybe not LLCs, but single owner businesses, right? And so the problem is if that one person has a health problem, guess what? The business has a health problem. The business is not doing anything without that person. If you go into the hospital, if you get hit by a bus, if you have a spouse or a parent or a child that has a medical condition, all of a sudden it needs to take 100% of your full-time responsibility to help them out, guess what? The business is now on the back burner and no longer exists because you didn't build a team. And so all that to say is I want 2022 to be the year that you grow your team. And I know that's going to be the huge thing that we're working on ourselves, is we're going to blow it up by this growing our team massively. And so part of that is make sure that we know the reasons for disengagement, so we don't have disengagement. So not knowing what is expected of the team members and the roles, we're going to address that by having clear job descriptions on the front end, so we don't have problems on the back end. Number 2 is lack of regular recognition. So often people don't get a "atta girl, atta boy, good job. I see you. You did great there. Keep it up."
And it doesn't even have to be something big. Like,
yeah,
it could be something incredibly small, or something even that they always do. It could be, hey, you know what? I know I really appreciate how you are so consistent with this specific task.
Mm-hmm.
You make sure it's always done ahead or on time or ahead of time, and you always do it excellently. So it doesn't even have to be I really appreciate you this extra thing, or you went above and beyond with this. It can simply be, hey, you do a fabulous job being super consistent about making sure this gets done and it never slips through the cracks. And I really appreciate that. And I notice it.
Yeah.
Because those monotonous things can almost mean more to have them praised than the extra stuff.
Yeah. Because like, if you're not praising people, if you're not given recognition where recognition's deserved or should be given, like, I mean, you're going to create a culture of people that don't like you. And like, really, like, why am I even doing this? I'll give you a great example. One of the mentors of mine shared a story where he built up this huge business. I mean, it was public, and he explained how, he got fired. Basically, it was kind of, they fired him. They're like, "Hey, we got a new CEO."
Sort of kicked him out,
they
like,
kicked him out of his own business, which can happen at that scale, right? And so he leaves, and not a single person, thousands of people in that business, not one single person said, "Hey, I really enjoyed working with you. I really appreciate all the time you spent with me." And that crushed him, because he then went to his mentor and he's like, "Hey, look, why am I even doing this?" And he was able to realign his thinking, and the mentors here, and basically point out that, look, it's about people. And at the end of the day, Are you concerned with the dollar amount in your bank account, or are you concerned with the impact that you had on a relationship?
And at the end of the day, like so many companies push, oh, we're a family, we're a community. Specifically, they love family.
Yeah, I've heard family a
And
lot.
that usually, I won't say always, that often seems to be such a fake feeling that it's forced.
Yeah.
There might be specific people in the company that feel like family members, but often as a whole, as a team, that is not the feeling that's there. And to truly get that without it feeling forced, you need to not focus so much on like just the team building things, but truly just caring about each person on your team. Because
So
if
powerful.
you take that extra effort to be aware of things that they've told you, to actually listen, so that when they say, oh yeah, I have an aunt in Maine that I like to visit on Christmas, when Christmas comes up the next year, you'll be like, hey, you're going to visit that aunt that you talked about in Maine that you guys go to normally? Because those kind of things, that's what people really care about. And that's the things that make them feel seen and feel special and feel loved and truly feel like they're family, because it builds a community. And if you're doing that and you're mirroring that, other people begin to listen to them as well. And it's not necessarily that every single person is going to feel super close to everyone else, but you're going to build a much closer, more tight-knit community than you ever would through thousands of team building exercises.
And it's just going the extra mile. I think Chick-fil-A talks about going the extra mile, it's so powerful. I mean, I noticed one of our platform partners actually post recently him dancing with his wife at a wedding. He's like, and I don't dance. This is a rare picture, right? Now I'm like, I'm gonna bring it up in conversation when I talk to him this week, because we talk every week. And I just I think it's important, because I'm like, dude, first of all, that's great that you're dancing with your wife. That's awesome. But secondly, is like, I see you posting, I see your stuff on social, and I want to commend you for getting out there and posting something, and that's awesome.
And that also ties into what we talked about before with wanting to know your employees' personal, professional, and financial goals. You can't know that if you don't know them.
Right.
And so if you're not actively taking an interest in their life like you would any other friend, and obviously the relationship is going to be slightly different than just excuse me, a peer-to-peer relationship, but it is important to be able to create some sort of relationship there. And it's going to differ with each person. You're going to click better with one person than another, but you should still actively be taking effort to make sure that you know each person on your team.
The third thing I want to talk about is the feedback on areas of improvement. Okay. We've talked about not knowing what is expected of the team member in their roles. We talked about lack of regular recognition. And now I want to talk about no feedback on areas of improvement. What's holding me back? What's the gap? These are great questions, right? Like, you want to have these conversations not on an annual review. You want to have these conversations on the daily, right? You want to make sure that everyone's on the same page, which is why you should have a daily meeting with your team. Because what gets measured gets accomplished. And if you're not measuring anything, you're probably not accomplishing anything, or very much of.
Not nearly as much as you could.
Or yeah, there you go. Not nearly as much as you could. And so when you do a daily meeting, when you are, giving feedback of improvements, like in real time, not like, you see The Office, right? It's like, man, it's like 10 years down the road. It's like, remember that time when you did this on this date? It's like, I saved, this review for then.
Well, and that joint
like,
time also builds camaraderie.
Yes.
Because you're going to have people that click better with some than others, but making that consistent time of meeting every single day to all together pulls everyone together, that everyone has a touch point with everyone else at least once a day.
I love that. So empowering to have a team that is on the same page, on the daily, and working together, because, and that's the other thing too, is like, you want to make sure that, oh, that's not my job. That's not something that anyone's ever allowed to say. All right. That's not my job. You know what? If it is going to help get us closer to our goals, your personal, professional, financial goals, which align with our vision, mission, and core values, because the business is the vehicle of which you will be able to fulfill your personal, professional, financial goals more effectively, efficiently, profitably. So how do you do that, right? Through constant feedback and improvements, not like at the end of the year stuff. Number 4 is the mission and purpose is unclear. We hit this hard at the beginning of tonight's live.
Yeah.
I hit it hard. I was just like on a roll. You got to know who, what, where, when, how. Like, who are you? What do you do? Where are you going? When are you going to get there? And how are you going to do it? And like, who is so important? Who you're going to do it with? Because you can have the wrong team.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at sports teams all the time. Guess what? They're professional sports teams. Those guys get traded all the time. All right. Same thing in business. I'm not sure why people get all worked up about, their salary and blah, blah, blah. Guess what? If you're not performing, you're not going to get your salary. You're going to get fired. You're going to get laid off. Because guess what? Even if the company downsizes and you were producing, guess what? They're going to retain you because you were a producer. But if you're not a producer, no, they're going to cut.
People get worried about commission versus salary, and at the end of the day, they're no more guaranteed than each other.
100%.
They're both should be performance based, and if you're doing your job and bringing in clients and bringing in sales and adding benefit, then you'll stay. But people don't view it that way, because there are a lot of companies that allow people to stay disengaged and checking in and checking out. But if you want your company to grow, no job should be any more secure than another one. And that's not to make people feel uncomfortable. It's to make them realize that if you're not producing, if you're not adding value to the team, then we're going to find someone who will.
Yeah. So the 5th and the final reason for disengagement is lack of team results. So this is KPIs, key performance indicators. If you do not have any key performance indicators, then how can you possibly have any results? If you haven't properly communicated to, back to number 1, not knowing what is expected of the team, like kind of full circle here, KPIs is another way of saying, hey, not knowing what is expected of me. If I don't know what my key performance indicators are, how can I possibly meet or exceed your expectations for me for this role? It's not possible. Every person should have a number. Every person should have a key performance indicator, multiple key performance indicators, to know, hey, I am calling enough people. I am closing enough deals. What is it? You got calls, you got your demos, you got your proposals, you got your closes, you got your follow-ups. I mean, like, all these things should be in your KPIs, and you should know, hey, if I do 200 calls in a day, of those 200 calls, I will get exactly 4 people close on the very first call. It's amazing. Every single time, 2% will close without fail. And you know that because you know your numbers. Guess what? Between, 5 and 12, 80% of the people that you follow up with on the 5th to 12th follow-up. So if you're this following up once, twice, 3 times, or even 4 times, guess what? You've missed 80% of your potential sales, because 80% of sales happen between the 5th and the 12th follow-up.
And having those clear numbers that you can give someone walking into a role of saying, hey, if you do X number of things, you're going to have this percentage should turn to this, and this percentage should turn to that. That gives them a roadmap to work off of, so that it's not quite so scary. So when they're walking into that role, they're not going in blindly saying, I have no idea how many people I need to call to have someone actually say yes. You're giving them, hey, if you're doing this right, if you're practicing, if you're doing your sales training, if you're doing your role play before you call people each morning, you should have this many people say yes after you've made this number of calls. And so it gives not only them something to be able to base their work off of and be able to judge themselves off of, but it also allows you to be able to look at it and say, okay, well, when they come up and say, I haven't made any sales, what's wrong with me? you can start looking back at those numbers and going, well, you only made this number of calls, so that equaled, you had a good close rate for the number of calls you made, or, hey, you didn't make any calls, or, oh, look, we didn't do sales training. You can start checking through those things, and you have a checklist now to actually look through to be able to start problem solving, essentially, when you have someone who's struggling.
So it's about an hour. We've been going for a solid hour. So I hope you took notes tonight. I hope you were listening with like a learning mindset, because I can't tell you how powerful this is. 90% of the people that are going to hear this tonight are going to hear it, be like, oh man, that was great. And then they'll never apply it. And guess what? You just wasted an hour of your time. Because I will say waste in this case, because if you do not apply what you've learned, it's a waste. And that applies to every single area of life. If you don't apply what you learned, then you will have to relearn that lesson until you actually apply it. So just a quick recap, 2/3 of the workforce are disengaged, okay? Number 2, you have to learn how to engage, inspire, align, attract, develop, and retain remarkable team members who are in alignment with you. Before this goes out, I almost lost all my battery in that single episode. We are good to go. And the last thing I want to say is there are 5 specific elements that cause employee disengagement. We talked about them. No expectations, no recognition, no feedback, no purpose, and no results. Make sure you have all 5 so that you in a verse, right? Like make sure you do have expectations, you do have recognition, you do have feedback, you do have purpose, and you do have results, and you will create a strong team, and a team that people want to be a part of, because you do have a vision, you do have a mission, you do have core values. Well, that's about all I have to say about that. It's been an excellent episode of Rescue Owners Live, number 28, and I look forward to seeing you next week on Rescue Owners Live, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Until then, be great.
As a CPR instructor, you probably get asked how and where to buy equipment, like defibrillators and first aid kits. Up to now, you've probably either shrugged off the question or told them to Google it. Don't miss opportunities like that. Instead, be the one to not only provide the knowledge of how to save a life, but also the resources to be ready to rescue. It's time to become a Rescue Site affiliate, and it's incredibly easy to do. Introducing the Rescue Site Affiliate Program, the only customizable platform with every FDA-approved defibrillator on the market, first aid equipment, and so much more. Now with the Rescue Site Affiliate Program, you can recommend products and earn commissions without having to purchase, warehouse, or ship products. When you become a Rescue Site affiliate today, you are automatically approved and will receive a customizable link to your store with your name on it. You earn commissions from all qualifying purchases through the traffic you drive to your new store. Whether you're just getting started as a CPR instructor, whether you have a team of instructors, or whether you're a training center with thousands of instructors across the country, this program is for you. Stop shrugging and start providing both the knowledge and the resources to save more lives. Become a Rescue Site affiliate today.